The storm had just rolled over the small coastal town when Father Miguel Alvarez stepped into the old diocese and retreat center. Unaware that the speech he was about to give would ignite one of the most unexpected confrontations of his priesthood. Cameras from a visiting Anglican delegation were already being set up. Their lenses pointed with casual disinterest toward the podium. Among the guests was Bishop Thomas Harrington, a respected American Anglican leader known for his sharp intellect, rigid theological critiques, and an unfortunate tendency to dismiss anyone he considered beneath his academic stature. When Miguel walked past him, the bishop offered only a thin, mocking smile and whispered to his aide, loud enough for others to hear, "Let's see what stories the village priest has prepared for us today." The room chuckled. Yet what none of them knew was that Miguel carried a history that could dismantle arrogance with nothing but truth, humility, and a strength honed through years of pain, sacrifice, and a faith forged in storms harsher than the one outside. Miguel had served in some of the toughest regions of the Philippines, areas plagued by landslides, insurgencies, and poverty so thick it shaped the land like fog. He had buried children lost to cholera, comforted widows after armed clashes, and built makeshift schools from bamboo and hope. His reputation was not of academic brilliance, but of extreme resilience and compassion. Bishop Harrington, however, believed the priest's background represented simple spirituality, a term he often used to imply intellectual deficiency. As Miguel reviewed his notes quietly at the side of the hall, the bishop glanced at them and remarked, "I hope your stories are at least entertaining." His smirk widened when his entourage laughed. Miguel didn't respond. He simply closed his notebook and walked toward the stage with the calmness of a man who had survived worse humiliation. But the hall's atmosphere shifted as though some unseen tension sensed that tonight something far larger than a lecture would unfold. The moderator invited Father Miguel to speak first. Bishop Harrington leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, eyes half closed as if enduring a tedious chore. The lights dimmed slightly, the audience quieted, and Miguel began without preamble. "Years ago," he said, "I witnessed something that changed not just how I minister, but how I understand power." His tone was so steady, so anchored that the bishop's eyes opened with a trace of curiosity. Miguel recounted a time when a devastating typhoon ripped apart a mountain village, leaving dozens missing and hundreds injured. He described hiking through destroyed trails with nothing but a flashlight and a backpack of medical supplies. But as his story deepened, the audience leaned in not because of heroic feats, but because of the unbearable honesty with which he spoke. There was no self-glorification, only raw tragedy and the stubborn will to serve. And for the first time that night, Bishop Harrington found himself listening more than judging. Miguel spoke of a particular moment. A young mother trapped beneath collapsed beams, her infant crying beside her. Miguel had to choose. Wait for rescue teams that were hours away or attempt a risky improvised extraction alone. "I prayed," he said, "not for success, but for strength to face the outcome." He described using nothing but a rusted car jack and wooden planks to lift part of the debris. Every second felt like gambling with human life. When he finally freed the woman and child, he carried them kilometers down a fragmented slope in the dark while aftershocks shook the earth. By the time he arrived at the makeshift shelter, his arms were bleeding and he could barely stand. The room was silent. Even the bishop seemed unsettled. Miguel wasn't bragging. He was confessing the weight of service. And that authenticity was something Harrington, armored with academic pride, had never confronted in such naked form. Then Miguel shifted unexpectedly. But the real lesson, he continued, came not from the rescue, but from the man who mocked me that same night. The audience stirred. He was a local official, wealthy, sophisticated, highly educated. He told me I was wasting my time. He said, people like me were good only for prayer, not real action. Miguel's voice lowered. Hours later, I watched him cry over the body of his nephew, who died while he hesitated, waiting for a government rescue that never arrived. Several listeners inhaled sharply, and in that moment, I realized something profound. Knowledge without compassion is paralysis. Authority without humility is useless. And faith without service is nothing. Bishop Harrington shifted uneasily. Miguel wasn't speaking at him, but the message carved its way into the bishop's ego like slow, deliberate chiseling. The hall's earlier laughter felt distant now, almost shameful. Bishop Harrington was supposed to speak next, but when the moderator gestured to him, the bishop held up a finger, signaling he needed a moment. He seemed disoriented, conflicted. Miguel's story had dismantled his assumptions, not through debate, but through lived experience, something Harrington valued in theory, but rarely encountered. When he finally stood, he approached the podium with the careful steps of a man questioning his own footing. "Father Miguel," he began with a forced smile. "Your story is touching." The audience sensed tension. Harrington continued. But emotional narratives cannot replace rigorous theological discourse. There it was, the attempt to reclaim dominance. Yet something in his tone revealed insecurity. The bishop proceeded with a lecture about ecclesiastical structures, ancient languages, and doctrinal interpretations. His speech was polished, academic, impeccably constructed. But halfway through, Miguel noticed something. The audience was no longer connecting. Their minds were still anchored in the stormy mountains Miguel had described. As Harrington spoke, his own voice began to falter slightly, not in content, but in conviction. He sensed the divide. He sensed that for the first time in his career, scholarly authority did not translate to respect. Standing on stage, he saw the audience staring with polite detachment, waiting for something real, something human. His polished arguments, once his greatest weapon, now felt like smoke dissipating in the air. When he finished, the applause was sparse. The bishop returned to his seat, jaw tight. Miguel nodded respectfully, but silence hung between them with a weight neither man could ignore. The moderator announced a short open forum. The first question came from a young seminarian who asked Miguel, not Harrington, "How do you keep faith alive when the world collapses around you?" The bishop exhaled sharply. This evening was slipping beyond his control. Miguel answered with humility. "Faith survives when it becomes embodied," he said. "Not in words, but in actions, not in titles, but in choices." The seminarian nodded, deeply moved. The next question followed the same pattern. Audience members gravitating to the priest whose voice carried lived authority rather than theoretical mastery. Harrington watched in growing silence, feeling a discomfort he had not felt in decades. He crossed his legs, untied them, then crossed them again. He tapped his fingers on his knee. His face betrayed frustration, confusion, even fear. Eventually, someone finally addressed him, but the question cut deeper than expected. "Bishop Harrington," a woman asked, "can you share a moment when you had to act beyond doctrine? A moment when theory wasn't enough?" The bishop froze. He opened his mouth, but no words emerged. He had never been asked to justify his faith through experience. He had always been celebrated for intellect alone. To break the tension, Miguel stepped in. "Let me share a story connected to the bishop's question," he offered gently. Harrington blinked surprised. Miguel continued. "A few years ago, a foreign volunteer visited our mission. He was brilliant, Harvard-educated, published author, admired everywhere he went. But on his first night, he mocked our methods. He said our work was primitive humanitarianism. The audience frowned. The next morning, we found him overwhelmed by the suffering he witnessed. He didn't know how to comfort a dying child. He didn't know how to negotiate with grieving parents. He didn't know how to speak without offending the very people he wanted to help. He had knowledge but no practice. Intelligence but no grounding. Miguel paused meaningfully, but he learned. And when he did, he became one of our greatest allies. The bishop understood the parallel instantly. Miguel wasn't humiliating him. He was inviting him into humility. Harrington's chest tightened. He inhaled slowly, his eyes drifting toward the floor. The audience sensed something shifting between the two men. Not conflict anymore, but a quiet collision of worlds. Miguel's tone had changed from testimonial to introspective, as though he was guiding the bishop carefully away from pride. "Faith," Miguel added, "is not a competition. It is a shared burden," the audience murmured softly in agreement. The bishop swallowed hard. He felt his earlier mockery return to him like an echo he could no longer ignore. Suddenly the memory of his dismissive whisper earlier felt unbearably petty. Miguel had offered vulnerability. Harrington had offered arrogance. And now, confronted by this contrast, the bishop felt the first cracks in the armor of superiority he had worn for decades. He shifted in his seat again, but this time the movement signaled not restlessness, but awakening. After the forum, a power outage from the storm plunged the retreat center into near darkness. Emergency lights flickered to life, casting long shadows across the hall. The sudden dimness unsettled the crowd, and murmurs rose. The bishop's entourage immediately moved to leave, but the doors were jammed from a fallen branch outside. Miguel stepped forward calmly. "There is no danger," he assured the guests. "The generators will restart shortly. Until then, stay inside." Harrington found himself near Miguel, the two standing just feet apart in the muted glow. The bishop cleared his throat. "Father Miguel," he said hesitantly, "your story earlier. It was compelling." Miguel nodded politely, neither proud nor dismissive. "But I must admit," Harrington continued quietly, "I may have misjudged you." These simple words, spoken with difficulty, hung in the air like a fragile confession. Miguel's response would determine whether the bishop grew or retreated back into pride. Miguel did not respond immediately. Instead, he walked to a nearby bench and gestured for Harrington to sit with him. The two men lowered themselves slowly, the storm's distant rumble filling the silence. "Bishop," Miguel finally said, "we all misjudge others at times. The question is not whether we err, but whether we learn." Harrington exhaled, the tension easing from his shoulders. "I didn't expect to learn from a priest whose experiences are so different from mine," he admitted. "Different does not mean lesser," Miguel replied. "You have knowledge I do not have. I have experiences you have not lived. But both can serve the same purpose if we allow them to." Harrington swallowed, humbled. For the first time in years, he felt like a student, not a scholar. As they spoke, one of Miguel's volunteers approached hurriedly. "Father, the lower hall is starting to flood," she said. Without hesitation, Miguel stood. "We need to move everyone upstairs." Harrington blinked. He had not even heard the rain intensify. Miguel sprang into action, guiding guests to safety, clearing hallways, directing volunteers. He moved with urgency, but without panic, a calm commander in chaos. Harrington watched, astonished. The priest's authority did not come from rank or robes, but from instinct, discipline, and compassion. At one point, Miguel waded into ankle-deep water to help an elderly man who struggled to walk. Harrington followed but slipped slightly on the wet floor. Miguel caught his arm with surprising strength. "Careful, Bishop," he said kindly. In that moment, Harrington realized how unprepared he was for real crisis. Hours later, once the storm subsided and the power finally returned, the hall buzzed with relieved chatter. People thanked Miguel and his team for their quick action. Harrington stood quietly in the corner, watching as the priest offered comfort to worried guests, checked on the elderly, and personally mopped part of the wet floor. No task was too small for him. When the crowd finally dispersed, Miguel joined Harrington again. The bishop looked exhausted, not from physical exertion, but from the internal battle he had fought all evening. "Father Miguel," he said, voice trembling slightly, "I came here expecting to teach. Instead, I was taught." Miguel smiled softly. "Lessons find us when we are ready to receive them." Harrington nodded, the weight of his earlier arrogance pressing on him like a cloak he no longer wished to wear. When dawn finally broke, pale light filtered through the retreat center's tall windows, revealing the aftermath of the storm. Fallen branches littered the courtyard, puddles shimmered across walkways, and the ocean beyond the cliffside churned with residual unrest. Miguel stepped outside to inspect the grounds, and to his surprise, Bishop Harrington followed. The bishop seemed quieter than before, his usual authoritative posture softened. "Do you always respond to crises like last night?" he asked. Miguel shrugged lightly. "We respond however we must. People depend on us. When suffering arrives, it seldom waits for committees or polished speeches." Harrington winced at the unintended jab, though Miguel had not meant it as one. They walked slowly along the wet pavement, the air thick with the smell of salt and mud. As they approached the chapel overlooking the sea, Miguel noticed the bishop studying the damaged structure with unspoken concern. The wind had torn part of the roof, scattering wooden shingles across the lawn. "This chapel has survived decades of storms," Miguel said, touching its weathered frame. "It will survive this, too." Harrington ran his fingers along the cracked paint, as if trying to understand the resilience built into the walls. "You speak of suffering with such ease," he said quietly. "Almost as if you expect it." Miguel shook his head. "No one becomes comfortable with suffering. But in my work, we learn not to fear it. We learn to meet it." The bishop felt the weight of those words. He had spent years discussing faith in well-lit halls, debating doctrines, constructing arguments insulated from real-world pain. The two men entered the chapel, its interior dim but peaceful. A few candles still burned on the altar from the night before, their flames bending in the faint morning breeze. Harrington sat slowly in the front pew, hands clasped, eyes distant. Miguel remained standing near the altar, observing him. The bishop finally spoke. "I mocked you yesterday," he admitted. "Not because of who you are, but because of who I thought you were." His voice cracked slightly. "I judged you before I heard you speak." Miguel approached gently. "We all carry prejudices, Bishop. What matters is that we recognize them and choose differently going forward." Harrington exhaled deeply, emotions tightening his throat. "You have served in conditions I cannot imagine. Last night I realized I have memorized doctrine, but you have lived it." Miguel placed a hand on his shoulder. "Doctrine is essential, but without compassion it becomes stone." Harrington nodded slowly, absorbing the truth with quiet humility. Their quiet reflection was interrupted by the unexpected arrival of townspeople carrying tools, wood, and supplies. Word had spread overnight that the chapel and retreat center were damaged, and the community came as one to repair it. A fisherman set down a ladder. A group of women brought food. School children carried buckets of nails and ropes. Miguel smiled. "This is what faith looks like here," he said. Harrington watched as villagers, poor by material standards yet rich in unity, worked with remarkable efficiency. They greeted Miguel warmly, many calling him Padre, their affection unmistakable. The bishop stood at the edge of the activity, feeling strangely displaced yet deeply moved. Without expectation, a young boy tugged his robe and handed him a hammer. "You help," the boy said simply. The bishop blinked, then chuckled in disbelief. For the first time in years, he felt not like a theologian, not like a leader, but like a servant, and it humbled him profoundly. Harrington joined the repairs hesitantly at first, unsure of his physical ability. Miguel guided him, showing how to secure loose boards and reinforce weakened beams. The bishop's hands trembled slightly as he hammered, unused to manual labor. But as the morning progressed, he found rhythm in the work. Sweat blurred his glasses, dust streaked his sleeves. Yet he felt more purposeful than during any conference he had attended in years. At one point he paused, observing the villagers. Their laughter filled the air, their cooperation so natural it seemed woven into their culture. He watched Miguel moving among them, encouraging, instructing, comforting, and finally understood why the priest commanded such genuine respect. It was not about eloquence or credentials. It was about presence, service, humanity. Harrington swallowed hard. The realization struck him like a revelation. Somewhere along his polished career, he had forgotten this simplicity. He had forgotten that leadership began with humility. By lunchtime, the winds had calmed and the sun burned through the clouds, revealing a bright sky. Repairs were nearly complete. Volunteers gathered beneath a large mango tree where the women had prepared steaming pots of rice and fish stew. Harrington sat on a wooden bench, exhausted but content. Miguel handed him a bowl of food, and the bishop accepted it gratefully. As they ate, villagers shared stories of past storms, of rebuilding and resilience, of how faith guided them through losses that would have broken other communities. Harrington listened attentively, absorbing lessons no seminary had ever taught him. Miguel watched the bishop with quiet satisfaction. He saw a change taking shape, not forced, but unfolding naturally like dawn after a long night. "You seem quieter than usual," Miguel remarked. Harrington nodded. "I feel small," he admitted, "but not in a way that hurts, more in a way that frees." Miguel's smile widened. "Then the storm taught you too." That afternoon, a meeting was held to evaluate the event's continuation. The Anglican delegation assumed Bishop Harrington would want to cancel his scheduled second lecture given the disrupted agenda. But to everyone's surprise, Harrington declared that he would still speak, though not the lecture he had prepared. When the audience reconvened in the hall, repaired and dry, Harrington stepped onto the stage carrying no notes. His posture was different now, less rigid, more grounded. The murmurs died as he surveyed the crowd. "Last night," he began, "I thought I came here to teach, but instead I was confronted with a truth that shook me." He paused, glancing at Miguel. "I judged a man without understanding the weight he carries. And in doing so, I revealed the limits of my own faith." The audience stirred, sensing vulnerability from a man who seldom exposed it. Harrington inhaled deeply before continuing. "I have spent years discussing theology," he said slowly, "but rarely have I lived its hardest demands. I preached service but seldom touched suffering. I taught compassion but kept myself distant from those who needed it." He stepped closer to the audience. "Last night, the priest I mocked taught me a lesson no book ever could, that faith must descend into the dirt, into the floodwaters, into the chaos where people cry out for hope. And so," Harrington continued, "I ask your forgiveness, not only for my arrogance, but for the blindness that allowed it to grow." The hall fell silent, not a cough, not a shuffle, just a quiet stillness that acknowledged the gravity of the bishop's confession. When he finished, the audience rose in applause, not out of admiration for eloquence, but for honesty. The bishop bowed his head, visibly moved. Miguel approached him on stage, offering a handshake. Harrington took it firmly, then embraced him in a gesture that surprised them both. "Thank you," the bishop whispered, "for teaching me what I did not know I needed to learn." Later that evening, as the sun dipped behind the ocean, Miguel and Harrington walked along the cliffside path overlooking the glowing horizon. The air was warm, the waves steady. Harrington spoke first. "I spent years defending my status, my knowledge, my accomplishments. I thought authority required dominance." Miguel responded gently. "Authority requires service. Respect is earned, not demanded." Harrington absorbed this quietly. "I realize now that when I mocked you, I wasn't judging you, I was protecting my ego." Miguel nodded in understanding. Ego is the hardest thing to confront. Before Harrington returned to his delegation, he requested to visit the mountain village Miguel had mentioned in his first story. When they arrived, he was overwhelmed. Children played near newly built homes. Farmers tended to terrace fields. Women prepared meals over open fires. Miguel introduced him to the young mother he once rescued, her daughter now thriving. Harrington felt tears sting his eyes. "You saved them," he whispered. Miguel shook his head. "I helped, but they saved themselves. Community survives because they love fiercely." Harrington finally understood why Miguel's voice carried such weight. In the weeks following his return to the United States, Harrington's colleagues noticed an unmistakable shift. His sermons became less academic and more compassionate. He visited hospitals, shelters, and struggling parishes personally. When asked about the change, he would only smile and say, "I met someone who reminded me what faith looks like." Months later, during a conference, he shared the story of a Filipino priest who taught him that true faith is found not in superiority, but in service. And across the world, Father Miguel read those words and smiled, knowing the lesson had taken root.